Okay. Welcome everyone, and thank you for attending today's support service conference. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day. Um, Please do note, this session has a lot of content to cover, so if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll try and get to them at the end of the session if there's time. Today's presentation will be found as a PDF in a copy in the participant folder, which you can access from your agenda. I will be dropping links that are mentioned throughout today's session in the chat, but you can also access those links on like within the PDF copies. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. Today's conference is supported and implemented, organized by SPARC, the Support Professional Advisory Resource Committee. As you participate in today's conference, think about things you'd like to learn about and participate in the future. You will receive an email from me with an evaluation. So your feedback on future conference topics is really important to us. So please take time to fill that out. Thank you. Next slide. So SPARC, the Support Professional Advisory Resource Committee, is open for anyone to join. With that email, you'll get that with the evaluation. You can respond to me, letting me know if you'd like to join. We meet the second Thursday of each month between 10:30 to 11:30, with the exception of December. Our meetings include updates from the state staff, and local programs provide updates. We network, lend support to each other, and advise the state when requested on issues that impact adult basic education. One example is that we were able to review and advise on the state on the CASAS goals reading 2 and TABE 1314 assessments that just came out, so that they were able to update their policy. And we plan and implement the yearly support service conference that you're attending today. Thank you. As well as coffee break sessions that we offer throughout the program year. And they're about 1-hour sessions about the third Friday of each month. And thank you. We're glad that you're here, and we look forward to seeing you in future sessions today and coffee breaks. So next slide. Last, I forgot. And SPARC and Minnesota Department of Education, I'm happy to advise that we were awarded at the CASAS Summer Institute this year, National Promising Best Practice Award, for the work that we do. So, you know, today's conference is geared towards support staff. And this is one of our only opportunities to have this type of professional development. So in a lot of other states don't intentionally support and organize stuff like this and support their staff in this way. So we got a shout out from CASAS about that, and I'm very proud to work with the people that have been doing these, working in SPARC and putting on these conferences for a number of years, like since 2006, 2015. Next slide.
And I would like to welcome you on behalf of Southwest ABE. We do hold the support network grant for providing assessment and support staff training. So welcome one more time. Next slide, please. And Rachel already mentioned our coffee break series, so I won't go deep into that, but just note that we did have one in October talking about best practices for intake with beginning literacy learners. And if you missed that, Patsy and Rebecca will be repeating that today at 2 o'clock. And then we've got future coffee breaks planned for after the first of the year. In January, we're going to be talking more about Social Security numbers. Jenny's going to talk a little bit about that this morning, but we will have a chance to go a little bit deeper into that, how to talk to students, where to find the information, why we need it, all of those things. So please join us in January. Look for information early in January on signing up for that coffee break.
Excellent. Thank you, Marty. Thank you, Rachel. My name is Brad Hasskamp, and I'm with the Minnesota Department of Education. And I'm proud to introduce our team of six individuals at the Minnesota Department of Education that work and dedicate their professional work to adult education, ABE, and serving all of you and your programs to make sure that you're able to serve your communities and students. Now, we normally have a different slide for introductions, but I wanted to show off the the newly revised mnabe.org. So thank you to Rachel who put so we can show you mnabe.org. If you go to mnabe.org, you can see all of our ABE staff and why you should contact us. So on our team, my role is the State Adult Education Director, but we also have Astrid Leiden, our Professional Development Specialist, Haley Swanson, our Grants, Records, and Administrative Specialist, Jodi Versaw, our Program Quality Specialist, Julie Dinkow, our Transition Specialist, Neil Allard, our Communications and Administrative Support Specialist, and then we have our inbox, the shared inbox, mde.abe@state.mn.us. And so this is just wonderful to have this on the MNABE site. And you can see other types of contacts and directories on this site. But just take a moment to, I hope all of you have seen the newly revised site, but this site is just majorly upgraded. And so we're very thankful for Literacy Action Network and all of our support network providers to help make this possible. But Literacy Action Network really helps host this to make this possible. So thank you. And please feel free to check out this site more as you have time. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today. This is such an amazing conference. It's one of the only conferences of this type in the nation for adult education that is focused to adult education support staff, whether you be database staff, working on intake or registration, or testing, or classroom assistants or program assistants. No matter what your role is within adult education, that support role is so essential to making the programs work. You are the logistics, you're the structure that make the programs possible. I want to give a special thank you to the Spark Committee, to all of you for making this work. A special shout out to Rachel, our chair, for leading this effort this year. Thank you very much, Rachel. Thank you also to Southwest ABE for hosting this as part of your supplemental service grant. Thank you, Marty. And thanks to our entire adult education team at the Minnesota Department of Education. It's great to be part of such a wonderful leadership team. And I thank each and every one of you that's presenting today, or that's tech hosting or co-hosting today. Thank you for making these sessions possible. Thank you for making this gathering possible. And I hope each and every one of you learns a lot and is able to engage and with each other and network and learn something new that you can take back and immediately apply to your program. At this point, I'm going to turn it over.
All right, thank you, Brad. Good morning, everyone. I am Jodi Versaw. As Brad mentioned, I am the Program Quality Specialist on the Adult Ed team here at MDE. Happy to be with you this morning. We like to take some time at this session to take a look back at the year that just finished and talk about some of the numbers and some of the data about our statewide system. So to start with, just some geography and a map of our system. Our statewide adult education system here in Minnesota, it covers the entire state and it is divided into consortia. We have 39 ABE consortia across the state, and within those consortia, there are almost 100 different organizations that are providers of ABE programming. Those 100 organizations are offering classes and programming at around 300 different physical locations across the state. So those are in very different places. Many of them are in schools or school district buildings, but we also have nonprofits, correctional facilities, college campuses, career force, tribal nations, many different places. And of course, also programming is offered online. In terms of the number of people in our system in this past school year, so 24-25, statewide, we served 57,772 students. So we always like to really pause and just consider how impactful our system is to serve that many students every year. In addition, we had in our system almost 1,500 paid staff. The majority of those are teachers, but then we also had a couple hundred counselors or paraprofessionals, and then about 300 folks who fit into the administrative or supervisory category. So that's what our staff looks like. But in addition to paid staff, our system also utilizes a lot of volunteers. And so last school year, we had more than 1,000 volunteers who volunteered in our statewide system. Another number that we are always thinking about and tracking in our system is contact hours. We know contact hours are important because they help us, show how the level of service that we're providing, and because they are tied to funding. So we have been looking for a number of years now, kind of back to pre-pandemic, and really tracking how hours have been recovering since they had a big dip during the pandemic. So as you can see on this graph, we are back in 24-25, we are back pretty close to the level of hours that we were at in 18-19, which was the last full year before the pandemic. So that is really great news and interesting to see. And in addition, we can also say that we are continuing to grow. So on the next slide, we've got kind of where we are at in the current year. You may know that when we count contact hours to use them for the following year, we start that contact hour reporting period in May. So right now, we've got 5 months worth of hours here to show you, to compare where we are at this year compared to last year. So we can show that this growth trend is still continuing. So in 2024, from May to September, we had about 1.4 million hours. And in that same time period this year, May to September 2025, we're up to about 1.6 million hours. So that is an increase in that period of time of more than 10%, which just shows that it looks like the growth that we've been experiencing ever since that COVID dip is still continuing. And maybe we will continue past where we were at the low point during COVID. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Brad to talk about some more numbers.
Thank you, Jodi. So in addition to the numbers, seeing how many people did we serve and how much service was provided, it's also helpful to think about how or what was the impact of that work. So there are 5 major indicators for performance according to the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, what we know as WIOA, our federal legislation for adult education and other programs. And you can see in in measurable skill gains, in median quarterly earnings, and in the credential indicator, helping individuals earn a credential and then move on to their next steps. With those 3 indicators, not only did we grow from the prior year, but we also met our federal targets. So the one that's most visible to you is measurable skill gains. So give yourselves a round of applause. We had almost a 5% increase in measurable skill gains from last year, from 23-24 to 24-25. And so that is outstanding. You did amazing work there. Thank you very much. Now, There are two indicators where we fell significantly below the targets, and interestingly enough, we actually saw a decline in performance or outcomes from the year before, and that is in employment 2 quarters or 6 months after leaving or exiting adult education, and employment 1 year after exiting adult education. So you can see there we both had a drop in the performance and we did not meet our targets. So let's dive into that a little bit more. A couple things to note. So out of that 57,000, those 57,000 individuals, 35,000 became participants. And that in terms of the number of participants, that was a 4.5% increase from the year before. In particular, there was an increase in the number of participants in ESL levels 1 through 3 and a very small increase in ABE levels 5 and 6. But the major increases were in ESL levels 1 through 3 last year. There was actually a decrease, a significant decrease in the number of participants in in the higher ESL levels, especially 5 and 6. But we saw decreases in ESL levels 4 through 6, and we also saw a decrease in students in ABE levels 1 through 4. So, overall, our MSG's measurable skill gains increased by 4.71% from last year, and that's largely due to the new MSG that was available last year. That's MSG 1D, and that means an individual passed a single subject GED test or a single subject HiSET test, and that was recorded, documented by you in SID. In addition, we saw an increase with our integrated education and training and our workplace literacy program outcomes, MSGs 3, 4, and 5. Further on with IET, or integrated education and training, we did see a 22% increase in individuals or learners that participated in an IET. So that is outstanding, 22% increase. And even more significant, a 38% increase in terms of individual learners that earned a credential and that you entered in SID. So that is outstanding to see growth in those, in the IET participation and in the number of learners that are earning a credential that's being documented in SID. So excellent work. Now, the area where we really struggled is the employment targets. So it's helpful to take a moment to think about these employment targets. Why didn't we meet those targets? Admittedly, there are multiple reasons here. First, it's important to know that this is the second consecutive year that we missed our employment targets and that our overall employment outcomes as a system have been declining. This year, I did note that I've heard from many other state directors in other states that their adult education systems also struggled to meet education or employment targets this year. So we are not the only ones. And unemployment rates are slightly increasing nationally. And it's also important to know that that the federal government has not kept our targets flat here, but they've actually been increasing our targets in these areas by 1.8% for second quarter employment 6 months after leaving adult ed, and more than 3% for those leaving 1 year, or for those employed 1 year after exit. So just in the 1 year alone, those are significant increases in our targets. Another major factor, though, is the percent of individuals in our system, participants without a Social Security number documented in SID. That's a big factor. This is the 4th year in a row where the percentage of participants with Social Security numbers documented in SID has declined. And for 3 years now, we have less than 60% of our participants statewide with a Social Security number in SID. And that is 60% is kind of our threshold to help us meet our ongoing targets. That's been a long-standing target, is that we want to make sure that we have at least 60% of our participants in SID with a documented Social Security number in that database. In 23-24, less than 53% of participants had a social security number in SID. That's the lowest percentage of participants with a social security number in SID than any other WIOA reporting year. So over the last 8 years. So that is a number that we really need to hopefully increase. But as we talk about increasing that, it's also helpful to know, how do we actually measure the outcomes for employment? So we're going to use the example of employment 6 months after exiting adult education, or what they call Q2, the second quarter after exiting adult education. So there are multiple steps to calculate this indicator. First, the SID team and the MDE staff, we work together to create the student list, data list that will help measure who we should be tracking for employment. Then we send those data lists to DEED to help, and then they will match the data with their internal systems, their unemployment databases. And they do that with the unemployment insurance database. And if for those of you in border communities, we also participate in the state wage interchange system. So that helps look for people who might be employed outside of Minnesota, like in North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, or Wisconsin. And so we can find to see if they have wages. Unfortunately, the only way that DEED is able to make this data match work is if there's a social security number for that individual in SID. So participants without a social security number in SID are counted as not having documented employment. Then DEED will send us those results as a cumulative report, cumulative set of numbers. Then DEED destroys all of the data files. So there's no individual data kept at DEED about any of our reporting. So that is the 5-step process of how the employment works. So then the actual measure, what we report is for Q2 employment, the bottom of the fraction, the denominator, is the total number of eligible participants. And this is ABE participants, those with individual learners with 12 plus hours documented during that second prior year. So this was 23-24 that we reported here in 25. They have to have an exit date during that second prior program year. So they had to have had 90 plus days without any ABE contact or proxy hours between July 1, 2023 and June 30th, 2024. They had to be, individuals that are marked as NRS exempt are taken out of that data, so that we do not include anyone that is listed as NRS exempt. And we make sure that the last contact hours in that period before the exit were not in corrections, because if they were still in corrections, it's not realistic for them to be to gain employment while they're incarcerated. So this is kind of our cohort, the bottom of the fraction. And then the successes of this fraction are any of those eligible participants that we noted at the bottom that DEED was able to match with employment based on the social security number provided. And so that is how the numerator is developed. And so we take this is our fraction here. So knowing that's how this is measured, how do we improve our employment outcomes? There are a couple different ways that we can improve our employment outcomes. The biggest one that we would like to target on, or that we think will have the biggest, most dramatic impact, would be to increase our effectiveness in collecting social security numbers from participants. A couple ways that we can do that. One, make sure that every enrollee in our system is at least asked to provide their social security number. Two, to explain to learners why they're being asked to provide a social security number. And three, if a participant does not originally, when they first enroll, if they do not originally provide a social security number, maybe in the next term or in the next year, you can ask them again. There are additional ways that you could increase effectiveness in collecting social security numbers, but those are some of the starting three. Next is to actually increase our workforce development programming and collaborations. That's integrated education and training programs or workplace education programs working with employers directly. This can really help increase our employment outcomes as well. Also connect more learners with employment goals to Career Force, some of our workforce development partners, other WIOA programs to help them get that employment support. And then the third major area is to check your data in SID regularly. Update your data in SID. Make sure it's accurate. See if there are any gaps that you can find that would help increase the accuracy of our data. And feel free in the chat to provide any additional ideas that you have to help us improve our employment outcomes so that we are not so far significantly below our federal targets. And that we can get a more accurate picture of the number and percent of our exited participants who are employed. Okay, at this point, for additional SID topics, I'm going to turn it over to the SID team.
Hey, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Brad. Can everyone hear me? I'm going to assume yes. Okay. Yes, to carry forward the topic that Brad has started, I am Jenny Schlukebier. I support the SID data system, and we had a few SID topics we wanted to touch base on today in the morning session while we have you all. So the first one, like I said, is piggybacking right on what Brad was talking about, which is social security number collection. It's kind of a hot topic of the last couple of years for the reasons that Brad expressed, is we need to get these numbers up because that is the way that the state can match with deed to show how many of our students who have exited are now working. So I just wanted to point out in SID where you can see what your rate is as a program. So if you're in SID and you run your desk audit report, which you all are Spark folks, so I know you probably know how to do that. So it's on the desk, it's on the report tab. There's a whole list of reports. There's the desk audit report. And when you run that report, it's going to run it for this current program year. It's going to run it for enrollees, which means all your students, even if they only have 1 or 2 hours. You can toggle that to participants because participants are the students who do get reported. But this early in the year, you might have a bunch of students who are only enrollees at this point who will eventually become participants. So you might as well run it for enrollees. And the first little table on this desk audit shows you what percentage of students have a social security number on file. So I've highlighted it in yellow here. The yes and no are those who don't. So you could click the little plus sign by both the yes and no's to see who those students are. That might be a huge list. And I'll show you another way you can find the students who don't have social security numbers. Because as Brad said, it is worthwhile at this point to try to get some of that info if you didn't get the first time around. And I'll get a little bit more into that in a moment. I also wanted to show you, oops, no, can you go back? Yeah. The other picture on this screen on the right-hand side is a picture of the student record. So at the top is the name and address, et cetera. And in the green box is, you can see that it shows a social security number and then it says mouse over. So if you have staff who are concerned about the security of the social security number or the students themselves, you can show them that it's not visible. And even when you do mouse over, you only see the first 2 digits and the last 2 digits. This is a fake student I have up here. This is not a real social security number. So, we do keep it quite secure. Once the number gets typed in, you even as staff can't even see the whole number again. So that's just a reminder that that if staff are concerned about gathering this info or students are concerned, you can show them that we do it's quite secure. And then on that same screen at the edit, you can see the blue edit box at the bottom. If the student doesn't have a social security number and you can put it in, you can click that edit box, type it in and save. And then the other bottom blue button says student reentry. And I'll get to that in a moment. So just remember that button right there. Okay, let's go to the next screen. Another way you can find a group of students who, and whether or not they have their social security number on file, is you can look at the student contact list report, which is also on that report tab. Now, if you have a huge program, you're going to run this and it's going to default Well, I think you select whether you want it for a particular class or the whole program. Normally, if you are a huge program, that might not be super useful to run this for your whole program, but you can click a toggle and run this just for a particular class. And you can see that final column all the way to the right where that red arrow is, shows you whether the student has social security number on file or not. And again, this screenshot is a bunch of fake students from our fake class. So if you are recruiting some of your teachers to help gather this info once they've gotten to know the students and feel more comfortable asking for this kind of thing, this report will narrow down which students in class do or don't have it on file already. All right, next screen. On another topic that is very related, but a little bit more all-encompassing, is we want to also remind programs to update all your student info when your students either return from having been gone for a while. We know students come and go for a variety of reasons with work and daycare and everything else going on in their life. Sometimes students are gone for a few months. We want to make sure you get in the habit of when students come back, say after an absence of about 3 months or so, that you do a full re-entry with the students so you can update their info. Okay, don't just plop them right back in the class, do re-entry. So if you remember that screen a couple screens ago that showed the students where the mouse over of their social security number, below that was the blue button said re-entry. If you click that button, up will pop this re-entry screen. And it's a long screen, so the top half is over here on the left, and the bottom half of the screen is over here on the right. This will be pre-filled out with their name and everything, and you can see it's pretty small, but there's a box where you'd put their social security number if that's missing. And it also shows you the first and last 2 digits if it already exists. If it's already in there, you don't have to do anything. Their name is pre-filled out with what's already in SID. Their address, you can leave all that if nothing has changed. But if they do have a new address, for example, you would click the new address button and type in their address. Then you would scroll down, and over on the right-hand side, you'll see the rest of the screen. This is where we have some of those required barriers to employment. So work status, if you do this reentry screen, you will be asked to update their work status, so whether they're employed, unemployed, not in the workforce. And I want to remind you, if they are unemployed, try to find out the date that they became unemployed and put that in that box to the right. Those are both in that green square that is highlighted. And all the rest of the intake questions are right here on the reentry screen, and you do need to update those. Okay, so, and the ones in the box for barriers to employment, you aren't forced to answer those questions, but we need you to check a box if it is accurate. So if the student has learning disability, check that box. If they are an ex-offender, check that box. Okay, and most importantly, something we want to highlight more as this year goes on, right here in this big green star, use this re-entry screen also to update ongoing student information. Yearly would be good, would be best. Okay, so it's easy to, students do stay. So not only do students come and go, but some students stick around for a long time. We have some really old info about students that has not been updated. And I highlighted that work status because that is a particular one that I can see looking at some student records that hasn't been updated in quite some time. So we're going to start encouraging you to go through this reentry process for students. So if all your students reschedule for classes in the fall, take that opportunity to hit the reentry button and update all their information. Okay, let's go to the next screen. All right, so enough of that intake stuff and social security number stuff. Another thing we always like to highlight when we have everyone's attention is the adult literacy hotline. Now, Caspian from Literacy Minnesota and I are doing a session on this later today, so you can get a lot more detail about it. If you want to make sure your stuff is updated, we'll walk you through that. But the Adult Literacy Hotline is provided by Literacy Minnesota. Rachel put a link to the actual hotline in the chat. You can go see how it works. Potential students, job counselors, whoever can go to this hotline. They can type in the city where the potential student lives, a distance. They can even click off content areas to look for programs that have classes that this student might be interested in taking. And all this information comes from your SID. Everything you have in SID, your classes, your subsites, etc., all that feeds the hotline, so the hotline knows when your classes are. The hotline knows whether you have English classes or GED classes. So you keep your stuff up to date in SID, then the hotline is by default up to date, and it's easy for programs to find, or I'm sorry, potential students to find programs near them that offer classes that they're interested in. One other thing I wanted to highlight is, like I said, all your information has to be updated in SID, which you know, it generally is, right? But also when they click on a program, they will see lists of classes that you offer. So it's also important to have your classes have names that kind of make sense. So instead of like the name of the teacher, like Joe's afternoon class, make sure your class is named ELL3 or GED reading, that kind of thing. We like to remind folks to keep that kind of information, that some of that information is viewable to the public on the hotline. But like I said, I'm doing a session later today. We'll get really into depth on that. All right, next one. One other thing that is very SID related, but also very related to the topics that Brad brought up, which is showing our measurable skill gains, was that new measurable skill gain as of last year, which is the 1D, MSG 1D. And that's about passing the single subject GED or HiSET assessment. That was new last year, so it's still new and we want to keep highlighting it. And interestingly enough, I'm doing another session today that is about MSGs. So we go into greater depth on this topic. But while we have all of you here, we wanted to point it out. So students can get MSG, a level gain, by passing one of those subject area tests. So you do have to put that test score into SID, just like you put in a CASAS test score or a TABE test score. And we have a link here. The second bullet is a link to an article about the MSG ones. 1A is about a level gain with CASAS TABE, and 1D, this one, is about a GED or HiSET subject. So that article has more information. And any questions you have, there's our email. And then one other screen here, or the next slide, we do have a quick screenshot of, if you're looking at that top half of this image, is if you're looking at a student's screen and you go to the assessment tab, this is where you put in test scores. And so you would just click that test box, hit the drop down and find the GED subject test that they took, the date they took it, and put in their score. So for the GED, it's a score of 145 or above is technically a passing score. So if that's the score that they got and you put it in, then SID will recognize that as a level gain and it'll appear on the level gain report. The second half of that screen is for if you're a teacher and you're looking at a class, you have the ability to put in test scores for students. And there's that assessment tab and you can do the same thing there. And one other last note about putting in test scores is if you've never put in GED subject area test scores before, they might not be on your drop down. And if that's the case, you do have to do a one-time task of turning that on so that it'll be on your drop down. And I think we have a link there for our help article on how to do that. All right, and I'm done.
Okay, we're running short on time. So testing updates. If you go to the next slide, there will be a TABE recertification this afternoon. So you will get a lot of this information at that. I think that's at 1 o'clock with Linda Keller. Just a reminder that we do have some free test administrations. So contact me if you are wanting any of those. Let's go to the next slide. You may have gotten an email from TABE regarding some changes in student registration for TABE Online. And they did change that. They added some items that needed to be completed. They did change that and it was turned on for maybe half a day. However, that has changed. And if you click one more time, Brad, that's been postponed. We don't know that it's not going to happen, but just don't worry about it right now. Hopefully they will get back to us when they decide to make some of those changes. Next slide, please. As far as CASAS, not too many changes right now. I don't have any free test administrations, but reminder that CASAS tests don't expire. So if you do purchase them, they're going to be good for in perpetuity, basically. I will be doing a training, a recertification training at 11 this morning. So if you need to redo your training, come and see me at 11. Next slide, please. We are implementing a remote assessment hub. It's a pilot this year, so it won't include necessarily everyone, but we want to get started. So we're working with Illinois. They're helping us learn how to do this. So it will be CASAS post-test only, and all ABE students will be eligible, and then NRS level 4 or higher for English language learners. And the students must have previously completed a computer-based test so that we know that they can handle that format. And the students then will be referred by their program, and the program will verify their previous testing. And it is free to you. So if you're interested in participating, just with a few students or more than that, please contact me. My email is here. So we would love to learn more, to be able to practice remote testing, and as it will be local or Minnesota proctors doing the testing and so forth. It's just Illinois is helping us with the process. So I hope to hear from you.
All right, thank you. This is Jodi again. I'm going to just really quickly run through a few slides that I hope later you can look back at the PDF and to find more. So we just want to remind you of a few resources that are available to everyone in our statewide system. The first on the next slide is just a reminder about our Minnesota Adult Education Support Network. These are organizations that are available to provide services and support for you. And this conference today is an example of one of the many activities that happen through our support network. On the next slide, there is a list of all of those providers and the basics of the services that they provide. And Rachel put the link in the chat so you can check out some more information about the support network on the mnabe.org website and find, if you're not familiar, please do spend some time looking at what services could be helpful to you or to your program. And then we also want to make sure that everybody knows that we have a few training classes that are run online that are open to any student in the state of, any adult ed student who meets the eligibility criteria. They're listed here: CDL, MOS, paraprofessional, and PCA. Those are the ones we are offering this year. On the next slide is a little more info. There is a video that can tell you more about these classes, and Rachel put that link in the chat. This year, there is a new, improved, and much more streamlined process for how to refer students to these courses and get them enrolled. If you've got any questions about that, Carly is our point person for that, and her email is here on that slide. So do take a minute to watch the video and then reach out to Carly if you've got questions.
Thank you, Jodi. So just as we wrap up, a couple things that we want to make sure you're aware of. There is professional development information that is shared in the MNABE Connect newsletter. Note that now this newsletter is being emailed by Atlas, not by Neil Allard at Minnesota Department of Education. So there is a link where you can sign up on the Atlas website for the newsletter. In addition, you can find the PD calendar for all events in our statewide adult education system on the Atlas events calendar, and that link is in the chat as well. Thank you all for making adult education successful. Like I said before, adult education support staff are the structure that make the programming work. You help with the logistics. You make sure that everything functions smoothly so that learners can get served effectively and that staff can do their jobs well. Thank you all for doing such amazing work in adult education. And I appreciate each and every one of you. And thank you all for being here today. And I look forward to learning from each and every one of you and hearing more updates from you throughout the day. At this point, I'm going to hand it over to Rachel.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Hi, everybody. Brad, can you move to the next slide, please? Thanks. I just dropped in the chat the conference agenda, participant folder, and the YouTube channel that we mentioned. Sessions will be recorded. The participant folder will have session slides with links that you can access as well. And again, you can just join each of the sessions that you would like to participate in today with the red join link within the agenda. Okay, so thank you so much. I know we're running a little bit over, so we appreciate your time. Thank you. And I think that's it, right, Brad? Yeah, I don't think we have time for questions. Sorry. I think a lot of questions were answered in the chat and good conversation about Social Security numbers for sure. Thanks, everyone. So we'll see.